Hi, I'm Crystal. This is a very easy watercolor project, and if you have not thus far been using watercolors in your card making, I hope you'll give this a try. The materials I'm using are not really anything special. The paints are really inexpensive watercolors meant for children, but you really do need to use either watercolor paper or mixed media paper. Now that also does not need to be particularly expensive, but you do need that type of paper in order for the watercolors to move around on the surface of the paper. Now I think that if you're not a strong watercolorist, and I'm not particularly, although I'm always trying to improve, that heat embossing the stamped image is really key, because it really does help you avoid having the color bleed into places where you don't want. But I do think you need to embrace a very loose style when you watercolor. If your skills are not strong, or if you don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing this. My focus on this project was to get a nice card, but in a reasonable amount of time. And I've sped the painting up here, but overall this painting from beginning to end, each panel took between 10 and 15 minutes. So once you've got your color on, one of the things to remember about watercolor is that water mediums will blend with one another while they are wet. So I've tried a whole bunch of different coloring mediums. I've tried alcohol ink, and I've tried Copic markers, and I've tried colored pencils, and I think it is important to try all the different mediums to find the one that really speaks to you, the one that you enjoy using. And for you, maybe that's all of them. But I really found that watercolor is where I want to be. It's easy to clean up, it's easy to use, everything blends very nicely, it doesn't take a lot of effort to get stuff to blend, and so that's right in my wheelhouse. So I've embraced the loose style. I'm remembering that the paint will blend when it's wet, and I'm just dropping in these little bits of color to give a little shade to my flower there. And I think that you do have to embrace the imperfection unless you want to spend a lot of time on this. Now I am always trying to improve my painting, but in this case the stamp is doing a lot of the work, particularly on these little purple flowers. All the detail is in the stamped image itself, and so I don't need to add a lot of detail with the paint. It's really on the yellow flowers where there's some scope to do some different things with the color, or some different things with the paint. But those little purple flowers, or the little berries, those are very tiny bits of space, and so I want to let the stamp do the work. I am blending the paint a little bit to change the color, because those berries are right on top of one another, and I don't want each berry to be the same color as the one next to it. But otherwise, I'm using those colors pretty much straight as they came from that $4 paint set meant for children. Now I did paint the leaves very, very loosely first, and now that they've dried a little bit, I am adding a little bit darker color on top of my leaves. No real variation or shading going on there. I feel like the star of the show is definitely the flower. And once we get to the very end of this, of course, I am going to embrace the artistic splatter, which covers a multitude of shortcomings, I think. So I'm just adding my green paint there to the leaves, and I'm always worried that I'm going to miss something. So I'm cleaning my brush between the different colors, but I don't like to paint all the green and then miss something, and I almost missed that central leaf. So that was almost a big mistake. So once the painting is wrapped up, you do want to make sure that absolutely everything is completely dry before you move on to the next step. So just as the paint will blend when it's wet, when you use wet paint over dry paint, it's separate. So your splatter will be separate from your painting if you let everything dry first. I wanted a little bit of a metallic sheen, so I've got a little bit of gel crayon there for some metallic gold. So I did this panel in two different versions. This is the one we just saw with the spatter and the very straightforward mounting. But then I did one where I used a die to cut the panel, and I used an embossing folder for the bottom layer, so a little bit of a different look. So I thank you for joining me today, and I hope you've enjoyed this and we'll try it. Thanks.